Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sustainability Summit. I'm your host, Vince Moreno with Empowering Pumps, and I'd like to welcome my first guest, Gary Dyson with Hydro. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks, Vince. Nice to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Gary Dyson. I have a PhD in pump design, and I've been designing pumps now since I was 16 years old. So even though I only look about 22, it's actually more like 45 years I've been designing pumps.
Wow.
So I work for Hydro Inc. and we're a specialist independent aftermarket company, really. And we specialize in making equipment more reliable and making it consume less power. So sustainability is really at the heart of what we do as well.
Great. And hence the Sustainability Summit. So welcome, Gary.
Great.
Tomas?
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me on here. My name is Tomas Dobrovolskis. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm with Hydrostall North America and been doing pumps for the last 19 years. And just recently, I became a board member of the Hydraulic Institute. So heavily involved in the pump industry and its surrounding industries.
Excellent. Todd, what about yourself?
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Todd Bush with Decarbon Fuse. And so I handle a lot of the commercial and I'll say evaluation side of low carbon projects. So Decarbon Fuse essentially offers kind of consulting around how to bring some low carbon products to market, as well as some other kind of self-service project tracking and basically market insights for anything kind of low carbon for the industrial side.
Let's see here. I'm Vince Moreno. I'm the president of Empowering Pumps and Equipment. Uh, we are a digital media marketing company for the pumps and all rotating equipment. And we love pumps. And I want to just say welcome, guys. Welcome to the Sustainability Summit. I have to tell you, I did some, uh, I guess you could say, I kind of did some research, which can be dangerous in looking up what is sustainability? What is it, right? And I came up with a definition here. It's the practice of using resources in a way that allows them to be maintained for a long time without depletion. It's about creating and maintaining conditions that allow humans and nature to coexist in a way that supports current and future generations. Assuming you all agree with that statement, right? So uh, the one thing that came up is this thing about carbon and carbon capture, and I would like to kind of delve down into that a little bit too. And Todd, you've got the name of the company, Decarbon Fuse, so maybe you can take the lead there and tell us a little bit about carbon. Why is carbon good or bad for us? And maybe you can share how that ties into the sustainability.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. I kind of look at industrial decarbonization broadly, very connected to sustainability. So if you think of it in terms of anything from economic, environmental, social, even some on the technology side, you have this interlocking decarbonization efforts that help bring sustainability projects forward. So for example, on the environmental side, a lot of the discussion has been around carbon capture for, being able to reduce emissions, being able to reduce kind of operational footprints. A lot of the projects that I end up working on are really around CO2 capture to be able to understand, can we utilize that for something, or can we store that somewhere to sequester it? And obviously that depends on kind of the end markets and if there's a premium. But sustainability in general, with decarbonization, I think is a way to kind of future-proof your company and bring new products to market.
So let's talk about some products. For example, Gary, Tomas, from a sustainability perspective, how does a company how does it work? Do you say I want to create a pump that uses less electricity, that uses less power, and therefore your mission is to be sustainable, or does the factory itself that creates the pump that saves electricity also focus on a sustainable practice in the process of developing a pump that is also sustainable? It's sort of a, I think that's a fair question, guys, right? Both Tomas and
That's a great question because I think it is both. It's the company and the product itself. Because the company uses a lot of resources to build a product. You know, here at Hydrostall, we are focused on CO2 and reducing our footprint. And then on the product itself, you're looking at efficiency. You're also looking that the product lasts a long time, that it's doesn't use a lot of resources. So from a, you know, from a maintenance standpoint, it's limited, and also that it can be recycled, right? So you want to use minimum amount of resources in the production and for the life of the product, but when it comes to repair and maintenance.
Gary, take it away.
Yeah, we're on a mission, really. We're on a mission to look at pumps in general and make them consume less power. And one of the things we found is that when we look at pumps that have been installed for quite a while, high megawatt units really, they are not doing what they were originally purchased to do. So they're generating more pressure than they need, they're running at operating conditions that are not ideal, and they're actually consuming power. So it's sort of a hierarchy of things we want to do from a sustainability standpoint. Number one for us is let's not use power we don't need to use to create pressure we don't need anymore. So we've had a great partnership with some really fantastic pump users who have allowed us to modify and change their equipment to save tens of thousands of tons of carbon dioxide from emission into the atmosphere. And on the flip side, just by not generating stuff you don't need, we've managed to save them operating cost as well. So it's twofold for us. We can save you operating cost and we can make your equipment consume less power.
I had a couple of notes here about, I mean, guys, this sustainability topic is kind of heavy in a way. I mean, it's cool, uh, but in all honesty, it was so vague for me at one point. You know, um, you've got the eat less meat concept where you're you know I go to Europe a lot. I see my family over there has chickens amongst their garden, and there's this circularity where the chickens are eating the bugs off the tomatoes, and then their waste is feeding the tomato. I mean, it's a beautiful concept, right? It really is. But how it almost seems impossible on an industrial level to do that, or it seems like it would be a very long-term, sustained, no pun intended, process. And reaching 100% seems almost impossible to reach a 100%, circularity of sustainability. I don't want to be negative. I'm just sharing that I'm no expert. My goal is to facilitate some discussion here on efficiency and sustainability. So please, any one of you are more than welcome to jump in, show your data, your website. Um, I'm going to go out to let me call out Todd. Todd, maybe you can show us a little bit about decarbon.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Let me see if I can share my screen and do like to kind of caveat. Obviously, I'm focused on a lot of the low carbon fuels, low carbon products. Hopefully, if you can see this pretty well.
Sure.
I like pointing back to, because the industrial decarbonization topic is so big and you start getting into sustainability drivers and trying to understand where you're going to actually, where as a company you're going to focus. Obviously, if you're building compressors, building pumps for energy efficient industrial processes, that's a great, you're already in line in kind of the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 type of emissions projects that are going on at a lot of corporations. But I like pointing people back to the McKinsey study that's essentially this global energy decarbonization pathway, where they're looking at some of the, in this particular chart, some of the EU data, and how there's been an effort to focus on electrification, focus on energy efficiency, to reduce basically kind of CO2 and CO2 equivalent for a number of years. And then this basically takes that forward to 2050 to see what possible solutions could be explored for many industrial use cases. So we've already been talking about a handful of them, right? Electrification, circularity. I'll mention low carbon fuels, even lower footprints for operations, such that you're using less land and you have a more modular approach to maybe constructing a facility, or even more modular approach to different pieces of equipment. And then lastly, kind of carbon capture. And I tend to focus a lot of my time on the low carbon fuel side, and as well as carbon capture. And as you start looking at these other industry segments, so whether you're thinking about ammonia or ethanol or hydrogen or even natural gas in this case, the cost of CO2 capture, I'd say, varies pretty widely depending on the total volumes of CO2 that are out there, and the individual facilities and what they're producing. And so this chart just gives you a little bit of a view of each segment, and each dot kind of represents a facility. And the line that's going across is the Inflation Reduction Act, $85 a ton, where they're basically saying for capturing CO2 and sequestering it, you get $85. For capturing CO2 and utilizing it, you would get basically $60 a ton. But I'm just using $85 a ton here to illustrate that many of the facilities across, whether that could be a blue ammonia product that comes to market, or a low carbon ethanol kind of gasoline additive that comes to market, both of those are well under that $85 a ton. And then as you get into kind of hydrogen facilities and natural gas emitters, so all of these are facilities in North America. There are a number of hydrogen and natural gas emitters that are above the $85 a ton, so kind of implying those are outside of the money and would be difficult projects to do. But still many facilities that are below that kind of black line that could capture the CO2, create call it a low carbon product, or a more sustainable product that can be brought to market for, in some cases, a premium. In other cases, it depends kind of where that market is, where that product is being sold. But for example, you have a lot of initiatives happening right now in the hydrogen space that are looking at providing blue ammonia, and that would be ammonia that you've captured the CO2 from, similar to hydrogen, where you have kind of blue hydrogen. You're capturing the CO2 and sequestering it, and then selling that hydrogen. So there's a number of kind of opportunities, individual facilities where you can capture that CO2 and basically begin bringing a low carbon product to market.
Interesting.
Yes.
Let me toss this back to Gary. Let me ask you a quick question. Hydro Inc., if memory serves, has hydrogen pumps, pumps for hydrogen. Am I right?
Not particularly pumps for hydrogen. What we have is technology in general for pumping any sort of equipment, but we focus on the aftermarket and the service side. So we're very much into making equipment that is really niche and unique to do what it actually needs to do. It's bespoke product really. It's not product that that you can just buy from a range of pumps. We will tailor a pump specifically to the exact needs of the customer. And we will change equipment that you've already bought. We will change its mechanical and hydraulic design so it does what it should do, not what you originally bought it to do. And we offer that unique service across many, many, many industrial processes, oil and gas, hydrogen, all sorts of processes. And I think we're on the sort of opposite end of Todd's discussion, really, because Todd's there saying, okay, we can sequester the CO2, we can capture the CO2. We're on the end of, don't put the CO2 in the atmosphere. Let's reduce how much CO2 you are actually creating by making machines that are not too big, do what they're supposed to do, and don't consume the power in the way that they have been doing. So, I mean, if you'd like, I can give you a couple of specific examples. We're working with a Middle Eastern oil company, and they bought some of their pipeline pumps maybe 25 years ago. Big megawatt units, high powered units. And after we performed a study on these units, we found that just 6 pumps were consuming. I think the total was you would have had to plant 500,000 trees a year to absorb the CO2 extra generated by these pumps, or you had to take 70,000 cars off the road every year. So we're trying to put things in terms that people can really visualize. 500,000 trees, 70,000 cars off the road. That's the CO2 we've saved from 6 pumps just by modifying the equipment and making it bespoke, so that it doesn't draw the power in. And one of the things I like to talk about power consumption, because I hear a lot of people talk about efficiency, and you can't measure efficiency. Efficiency is a calculated value. But if you can actually measure kilowatts, or you can measure current draw directly from the motors, and this is a really good way of looking at equipment before and after and demonstrating just what you've saved. And the US has some great websites. The US government has a great website now where you can put the amount of kilowatts you've saved on the equipment. It'll tell you the number of trees, and it'll tell you the number of cars off the road. So we're on this mission, and we're working with oil companies. And when I first started, I thought, I'm sure oil companies are not really interested in the environmental side, but actually they are. And Middle Eastern oil companies are trying to do less environmental damage than they have done in the past, and are willing to spend millions of dollars changing their equipment just from an environmental standpoint. So for me, over the past 5 years, I think there's been a refreshing move in the oil and gas industry as well to be more sustainable. And we're on the end of helping them do that.
Moss?
Yeah. So, we're heavily involved in the municipal market, and it comes down to 2 budgets when equipment gets purchased, right? There's the capital budget, and then there's the maintenance budget. If you only look at the capital budget, then you end up buying the cheapest pump, the most inexpensive pump, and that might not be sustainable. And it might not be efficient. So, if you're looking at those 2 costs and you're not looking at it combined, you're definitely not looking at this sustainability. So you have to, look at both budgets and combine them. And that's looking at, we do mainly solid handling pumps. So, the more solids you handle, the bigger the clearances have to be. And the bigger the clearances end up being less efficient. So you balance. There's always a balance of how big of solids you can pass and how efficient the pump. But luckily with a screw centrifugal impeller, which we primarily focus on, it can do both. It can have tight clearances and it could pass solid. So, from a sustainable point, sustainability, it's using less energy, and that's what you want at the end of the day. If I can show you just kind of some of the initiatives we're doing on our end, I'll share my screen here. Um, what we're doing is, can you see that?
Give it a second. It takes a second to, there you go. We're looking
Okay.
at material composition data sheet.
Yep. So just a couple of little slides. We're looking at materials used. It's kind of good to know when it comes to just the effect on the environment and what's part of the product. Recycling ratio. So how much of this component is made from a recycled material? Looking at a carbon footprint, how much carbon footprint was produced to make this product, and then a repair index, which I'll cover on the next slide, and then a declaration of conformity, ROAS, REACH. These are some of the programs that Europe has, initiated and started, and I think it's coming to the United States because a lot of the manufacturers are from over Europe. Um, So, RoHS is restriction of hazardous substances. REACH is looking at restriction of chemicals. And it's something that, like I said, Europe has a good start. And here we're just kind of looking at it. And then repair index. How repairable is this? And especially what Gary's doing with Hydro Inc. here in the States and all over the world is this equipment repairable? Because it is. If it is, and and if it's made out of metals, then it becomes almost 100% recyclable and repairable. And that's what you're looking for in sustainability and a product. This industry, wastewater, is about sustainability and, circular economy because you're taking water that's dirty and reusing it. And so now you also then put in a product that's that, and you're getting multiplication factors of, energy efficiency and sustainability.
I see. You know, that that actually was one of the things I was trying to wrap my mind around when we're talking about this whole sustainability thing, because it it's multifaceted. It can be with the individual. I've switched from water bottles to glass, because it could be packaging of your end product. It could literally be we've changed to reusable containers to ship a pump, as opposed to plastics that get thrown out and just go into the landfill. But there's all kinds of, I mean, this sustainability concept has tendrils that are just all over, and that's why it's a little bit, for me, a little bit intimidating, because I'm really asking you guys to just share, where are we, what can we do, and how can we all improve together to be a little bit more sustainable, with the understanding that the intention is so we can either leave the world a better place when we're gone for our kids, or just that the circularity of recycle and utilization, kind of like the old farm example I gave you with the chickens and the tomato plants. I mean, where are we, and can we get any better? Todd, you got any feedback on that? Or I'm kind of bouncing around here, but I think all of you guys got some slides to share. Gary, you got anything?
Okay. So this is a high energy pump in Oman, actually, and it's one of the pumping stations that exports oil out of Oman. And you can see at the top you've got this green curve. These are three pumps running in parallel, and that is what the pump was bought to do maybe 20 years ago. And the dotted green line is what is required of it. And this is just a typical situation that happens in hundreds of thousands of pumping stations around the world. People never change the pumps. People stay with it, and they just throttle this head away. So all this head here is broken down over a control valve, thrown away. So you spend all those kilowatts generating pressure at a certain flow, and then you break all that pressure down across the control valve. So all that power that you've used is not doing meaningful work. It's doing work that you're just casting aside. and it's broken, the pressure's broken down. So we've worked hand in hand with this oil company to effectively change their equipment in the field. So they could have gone away and they could have gone to a new equipment manufacturer and they could have said, okay, we want new equipment to do this. But what they allowed us to do was to hydraulically modify their equipment so it does in the same footprint, within the same pump, it does what it needs to do. It doesn't do what it was bought to do. So, and this in this particular instance, this is a sort of 3,500 tons per year of CO2 saved. And you can see it's 168,500 trees you'd have to plant or 770 cars off the street. But the great thing for these guys is it paid for itself. A million US dollars annually be saved by not using the kilowatts. And I think there's a sort of message in this because we need to look at things end to end. And the reason this has never been done before is the oil company didn't consider the cost of power because that was another state utility and they didn't pay for power. So we a state-owned oil company generating oil, but didn't pay for power from the state-owned generating facilities. So power was effectively free to them, but it's not free to the environment. The environment feels the consequence of that power you're generating and the way you're generating it. So again, not using the kilowatts is the right way, not putting the CO2 out there and reducing how much power we have to create. I think it is sort of the starting point for our mission of sustainability. We need to reduce is the starting point, and then the reuse and the recycle comes beyond that. But our first mission should be to reduce the number of kilowatts. And we all know the second most widely used machine in the world is a pump. So just imagine how many hundreds of millions of pumps there are out there every day. And you know from the statistics, you know from the equipment you see in the field, none of them are running where they are at their most efficient point. Every pump has got kilowatts in it that can be saved. Every pump, I'm sure. And we need to take that end-to-end approach so everybody is looking. And I like what Thomas said. Thomas said, if you don't consider the life cycle cost of the pump when you're purchasing it, you'll just buy the cheapest piece of equipment that isn't sustainable. And the statistics say over the life of a pump, 85% of the cost will be on power consumed. Probably 5% is first cost bought, installation. There's probably another 10% in there for maintenance and repair. But 85% of the money you spend on that pump will be on power. And if those pumps are big pumps, if those are a megawatt pump, then you just saving 10% of that consumed power can be an enormous benefit to everybody. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Fascinating. Thank you, Gary.
And maybe Vince, I'll just jump in real quick because
Please.
I think Gary hit on a couple really good points on kind of the life cycle side, and we're starting to see more of that life cycle analysis come into play from both the power perspective as well as individual products and equipment and individual facilities. And take, for example, in talking to power companies that are looking at different generation techniques. So they're obviously thinking about renewables and evaluating renewables, also evaluating what happens if they could capture the CO2 off of a maybe like a combined cycle type of plant, and what they could then do with those emissions if they're able to capture them and reuse them. So things like generating power, but capturing the CO2 and reusing it for synthetic gasoline. There's very interesting technology out there that's coming into play where you have lower carbon products, and basically, if you think of it in terms of life cycle analysis or carbon intensity, either one of those, sometimes they're used interchangeably, but you start thinking of all the CO2 reuse opportunities where you start creating synthetic products from CO2 to be able to reuse in our existing infrastructure. So, for example, if you have a car that's running on gasoline, then have an option for lower carbon gasoline. And some states in the U.S. and Canada are rewarding kind of synthetic or lower carbon intensity gasoline for some producers. So I think we're at the very early stages of this, especially as more and more companies are starting to evaluate, okay, what can I do in my operations? What can I do for buying power? Can I buy lower carbon power? And then, of course, kind of that the downstream impact. So where am I going to be evaluating my product or equipment in another situation that has impact on the buyer's kind of carbon intensity. So I think it's an exciting time and one where every industry and every company are kind of taking steps in different ways to get there. And that's one of the pieces, to me at least, that makes it challenging, but also exciting.
Excellent. Tomas, do you have anything to add? Do you have one of those impellers on hand that you can hold up? Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So yeah, I like that. I that actually allows solids to pass through in the water wastewater industry without clogging, which is a significant issue, I imagine. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
It is, we talk about efficiency, and efficiency of a clogged pump is zero. So you can't pick necessarily just the most efficient impeller. You have to look at all of at the application. And just to Gary's point is, there's no bad pump. It's a bad application of a pump, or if it's not running it near its BEP. You got to find the pump that fits the application. And, there's at HI, we have a thing called BEP, making sure the pumps are running at BEP, and maybe not near BEP, but a lot of the installations they get put in and then they don't know exactly where they're running. And so then they're, closing valves, running at run out, running at shut off. And, like Gary said, that consumes a lot of energy that is just wasted. And it comes down to, Vince, you were saying, how do we talk about sustainability? There's a lot out there, but it comes to education, right? Understanding what you have, what equipment you have, and from generation to generation. I've been doing this for 20 years, and some of the people I started with are long retired. And if that knowledge doesn't get passed down, or if there's no training out there, then it's lost. And you're focused on whatever's available and not necessarily looking at the right things.
Yeah, to your point, Gary, you had a graph up earlier where I'm assuming that top line was the BEP and the dotted line was reality, and there was a pretty
It was, yeah,
significant differential. And
yeah,
the
it was the
differential,
deviation of performance between the two. Yeah, yeah.
right, and a hefty portion of that was due to the valves. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
The proportion it's actually due to the pump being too big. The pump was
Ah,
too big for what they needed, and so to get rid of the extra head they were producing, they just broke it down across the valve. Yeah. So the valve was just a way of wasting pressure and wasting energy. Yeah.
yeah,
Which is a crazy thing to do.
it is.
And but I mean, I think I'd like to sort of echo what Thomas said about education as well. And I think we have to start to inspire the next generation of engineers as well, because it's engineers who are going to get us into a sustainable world. I think engineers sort of got us out of sustainability. Engineers invented the power station, the car, all these things that produce CO2. But it's also engineers who are going to get us out of this. And I'm very passionate about young engineers and getting engineers involved, so they understand that they can shape the future. They can shape the future of the technologies that are going to lead us for the next 200 years and get us to a sustainable future by reducing CO2 emissions. So, yeah, I agree with Thomas completely on that.
Thank
Yeah,
you for that.
and even in I've been doing this for 19 years and I've seen such a drastic change, right? I mean, we went from, no computers to cell phones to now AI. And it's in this last 40, 50 years, whatever, the industry and the world has woken up and looking at these things. And, you know, I don't care what kind of political side you're on, saving energy, sustainability is a win-win. This is, it's better for the environment. I don't care how you look at it.
Well, it's also better on your wallet. I mean, if you think about it, if you're leaving lights on and you're not home, you're not being you're not being a good steward to your own bank account. If you, I mean,
Yeah.
it gets right down to the harsh reality of you know you don't you don't have to align with a political party to do intelligent things that both help me and help the environment. I mean, I back in the old days, it was called being a good steward of what you're gifted with, taking care of what you have. But things have gotten much more complicated, and that's where, um, I you remember the Chinese pickup stick game where you touch one and you're messing up something over here. You know what I'm talking about? The little pickup sticks game. It's like that now. Sustainability has its if you touch something over here, you could mess up something over on that side. A good example, like I said, was packaging and material, not directly related to your product, but the vehicle by which you need to transport it to its destination. Um, I see it all the time in my own personal life when we take that peel off plastic off of something. I try to put it in the recycling bin. They reject it. They reject that cellophane as non-plastic. Well, to me, it's plastic. Why is that? So again, if you touch one thing, you think your heart's in the right place, you could be messing up something else over here. So it's a little bit challenging. I want to toss it to Todd a little bit. Todd, if you could just give us a flyover of what you and your company does, I think it might be time for a little bit of a commercial break, and let's hear what Todd's all about because he's got some interesting graphs here.
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of show a little bit of the kind of presentation, and let me go back to that same slide and share that. Let's see. Let me make sure I'm on the correct one. Yeah, so let's see. Hopefully you can see the slide. So Decarbon Fuse basically mentioned earlier, low carbon advisory and intelligence. We'll work with power companies, oil and gas, say generally asset owners. That could be ethanol producers, ammonia producers as well, along with any of those investors. And we started essentially about 5 years ago looking at emissions-based intensity for oil and gas, kind of various oil and gas equipment. And so a lot of that revolved around hydraulic horsepower and looking how companies were making a change to electrified pumps and electrified fleets. And so just maybe sharing an anecdote here, probably when we started out of, call it maybe 200, 290, 300 frac fleets that were out in oil and gas that were active. There were probably 3% that were essentially were e-fleets and that had electrification, kind of complete electrification in the field. As that moved from kind of 2020 till now, you're probably looking at about 40 to 50% of those fleets are electrified. And so that's one area that doesn't get talked about a lot, but the oilfield service companies and the pressure pumpers have had to have a focus on sustainability and reducing emissions and electrifying the equipment. And they've done that going from, call it, anywhere between 20 to 22 pumps on site, and these are frac pumps, down to usually about 12 or 14 frac pumps on site. So it's been a pretty much a transformation for that industry. And all that emissions work that we did there, we started taking that into, well, if we're saving some of those emissions and reducing others, or maybe capturing emissions, then what can we do for the emission side, and how do we use that? I'm going to flip through a couple slides real quick to get to one in particular. But so as we were thinking about those emissions and where they're coming from, whether that's coming, maybe low volumes off a compressor, or high volumes, high purity coming from a ammonia facility or even an ethanol facility, then characterizing that so you get an idea of, oh, you can create a new product out of it, or you can evaluate the sequestration of it, um, assessing kind of the transport side of this. So often there's a CO2 transportation element, which if you're in the US and Canada, there's already some CO2 demand from kind of the beverage industry and other markets. But right now, there's a lot of projects that are looking at, I'll call it, using renewable energy and using CO2 to create some e-fuel and other kind of CO2 byproducts out of that. And then after kind of assessing that transport, then plan the wells and facilities, depending on if you're going the sequestration or the utilization routes. And really all along, you're kind of doing stakeholder engagement and building the economics so that you can understand what these projects take and what type of impact they're going to have on the kind of stakeholder community. So if you've watched any or heard of any of these larger CO2 utilization projects, or even storage projects, many of them often face some, I'll say, headwinds from the stakeholder side to make sure that there is the community is actively engaged. They understand what's going on at that individual industrial facility, and then what's going to happen to that CO2 as it's either transported through or sequestered nearby. So those are all kind of considerations that you have to take as you start thinking about the either reducing the emissions or reusing them in some way. And so I just like using that as an example of kind of how you go through kind of that entire process from a call it a market participation side, as well as just thinking about what else you can do with those emission reductions and how that translates to new products, or even winning new business because you are taking into account the entire life cycle approach.
The beauty of this is everything you just pointed to, pumps are associated with that, virtually everything, which is, I mean, from water to gases to liquefied gas, all of that it's fascinating. You mentioned CO2 into alternative energy. Is that right? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so have really kind of synthetic kind of products. So CO2 taking some companies taking CO2 and creating other synthetic products like a synthetic gasoline, or even a CO2 to propylene, which is another chemical that's used often in the chemical industry and as an input to other products. So you start thinking of how to reduce the reliance on petroleum-based products and use CO2-based products. It becomes kind of, that's a whole kind of web of product replacement that's possible, but right now we're still kind of at the early stages of it.
I see. Okay. Well, I know one thing's for sure, water and good stewardship with water is one of the most basic fundamentals. I mean, we need water to live, and I'm sure Tomas, you could speak more about the water end of things for sure. I mean, it's a extremely important aspect. It's vital to life. If we don't have water, we're all dead. So,
Yeah. On
I
both
mean,
sides, you need fresh water and you also need to remove wastewater, right? For health reasons. So it's both ends.
yeah. Gary, you got anything?
I'm I'm sort of the opinion that everything's connected and interconnected now. So you talked about the pick up sticks games and things like that, and we
Yeah,
try to make these environmental changes to make things better, but everything has a consequence. And I'll just give you one example because I think um, it's a UK example. I won't be too critical of the UK. Well, the UK has stopped using coal to generate power. So we stopped probably 12 months ago. So we don't use coal at all. We use biomass and we use natural gas. So still not the most carbon carbon friendly technology, but we're still generating that. And we use nuclear. So the UK are building nuclear power. But one of the things we did do, and this talks to the consequence, is on the east coast of the UK, we converted a coal-fired power station to be a biomass power station. And environmentally, everybody said that's a great thing to do. But the consequence of that is somebody in Canada cuts down trees, pulps them, turns them into pellets, puts them on a ship, sails them across to the UK. They take them off the ship, puts them onto trains, 2 trains a day go across the UK, delivering biomass pellets into a power station. So we've made an incremental improvement by stopping using coal, but there's still so much more we can do because you need to think through the consequences upstream and downstream of the process you're improving as well. It's a holistic approach. And when we turn our attention to a high energy consuming pump, we take a holistic approach. We don't go to it with a view to doing the same thing every time. We look at what it's doing, we look at the situation it's in, and we try and use a bespoke engineered solution to address the problem. And I think that end to end approach is going to be needed much more in the future as we look at sustainability and we look at sort of cradle to grave for the CO2 aspects of it.
interesting. Yeah, that whole pellet concept, I've seen it firsthand just for people out in the country. Again, I'm more familiar with the Italian world, but in the mountains, I have family. They've converted from diesel fuel or coal to pellets. And now I see my 80-year-old aunt walking down the street with a 50-pound bag of pellets from her garage to her house to stay warm. And I think of how natural gravity feeding gas or diesel into a heater eliminates all that. Plus, you don't have to clean out the pellet dust on a weekly. And you're right. There are these far-reaching effects. And then, of course, the pellets are $5 a bag, and now they're 15 a bag or whatever. It's an interesting, all in the name of sustainability, which actually can work against the process or make it more challenging for the individual. So it's an interesting thought there. It sure is. Good point of view. What about KPIs in general? Do all of you guys utilize KPIs to here's where we are, here's where we're heading, so forth? You'll have to excuse my voice. I got a little bit of a cold, but are KPIs utilized?
I can say definitely KPIs are used, and we're working towards some of the environmental standards. An ISO standard now for an environmental standard. We're working towards ESG policies to make sure all of our sites have got ESG policies and good governance around environmental. And I think it's become very, very prevalent in Europe. I know it's not as much in the US, but I don't think now there's maybe 85% of businesses in the UK have an environmental and sustainability philosophy and a procedure and policy that they can be audited to. And I think that will be coming more and more worldwide as we see that grow.
Yeah, almost like a collaboration across supply chains for the shared goal concept.
Yeah,
I'm sure. I'm assuming everybody here has experienced that where someone's reaching out and wants to collaborate together to make it kind of a better end result.
The one
Todd,
thing I wanted to add in reducing CO2 and the cost of it, right? So there is going to be always initial costs, whether it comes to the product or whether it comes to the factory, whether it comes to switching systems, but it's the long run that you have to look at. And so, yes, there's a cost, but there's also a return on investment and energy savings and a benefit. So, and the, the new engineers, the fresh engineers right out of school that I visit at the EPC firms, they get that. And I'm excited about that because they're looking at it with new, fresh set of eyes. They're looking at sustainability. And you can talk about a product, whether it be custom engineered or a pump in the box. I mean, yes, custom engineered is a little bit easier to, let's say, to get it to higher efficiencies because you can make it specific. But that pump in the box or a more standard pump off the line doesn't have to be inefficient. You just have to find the right pump from the application and then look at energy consumption and CO2s. And I'm seeing a trend where we're putting specific energy on curves, looking at putting CO2 consumption on curves, and that's changing in the last couple of years. So I'm excited to see what the pump world is gonna show and allow you to make a decision, an educated decision.
So you're saying you actually will chart on a BEP curve the CO2 as well, your contribution or
Both.
diminished? Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
both. So, for the pump itself, for production of it, and then you also have to look at the piping. The piping plays a huge role too. It's not just the pump. If you select the wrong piping, it's the whole system. So you have to ha look at, three different components: factory, pump, and system too.
Yep. And just to echo that, I'm seeing on the carbon intensity scores becoming more and more prevalent across whether that is a equipment supplier or compressor or anything that's going to be used in a process that could impact kind of an end product CI score. So whether that's, if you think of it, we'll do a lot around scope one kind of emissions, which are direct kind of from the operations. Scope two is your power side and what you can do for power, and scope three is more the supply chain and kind of downstream impacts. But seeing that CI score across so many industries right now where it made sense for, let's call it ethanol and ammonia and hydrogen for quite some time because they were selling into a market that required it. But now you have all of the people that are working with those industries also calculating their CI scores for their individual products so that they can show that benefit not only from a selling side, but also kind of a sustainability side.
Again, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the Sustainability Summit. And I want to go around the table. We'll start with Todd and just do a deeper dive, kind of what is your company, what's it all about, and how can it help folks that are looking here? Because I think each and every one of you has a product and an outstanding company, and you deserve some time to just convey this is who we are, this is what we're all about, and how it relates to sustainability. So we'll start with Todd, go to Gary, and then Tomas.
Perfect. Good morning. So Todd Bush, Managing Director of Decarbon Fuse, and we offer low carbon intelligence and advisory for, I'll say, all types of industrial firms. Many of those are energy producers, could be gasoline producers, and even moves into some of the chemical industry as well. And essentially what we help do from a consulting side is bring new projects to market. So that could be new types of CO2 utilization projects, could be CO2 sequestration projects, even evaluating carbon capture for power. And we'll like to come in from I'll say a project perspective and look at individual facilities to understand what facilities are around, where those CO2 sources are, and how we can take the existing kind of CO2 and do something with it. So often that means characterizing the emissions, understanding what's happening from an individual facility side to make that CO2 economic in some way. So like I said, most of those projects are CO2 utilization and carbon capture focused. Now, we do offer some tools for individuals that are in kind of looking at decarbonization more broadly. And those are kind of our Decarbon Fuse platform, where we have a view where you can see what's happening in kind of hydrogen industry or blue ammonia, even ethanol, and be able to take what that looks like from a kind of carbon capture and CO2 utilization standpoint. And
Now we're
then,
looking at, I'm showing off your main page there, Todd, just for a
oh yeah,
second.
perfect.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and if you want to switch to it and do a deeper dive, that's fine. I don't have all the passwords like you do, just the
Yeah,
main page, but it
yeah.
is some kind of a repository for a lot of information regarding carbon capture, and
Yes. So, one moment, because well, I don't actually have that up right now, but I can tell you it's basically kind of all the sources, and I can show at least a quick little
would you?
map
Okay, all right.
uh, on what that looks like. But essentially, we'll end up um, taking all of the emission sources across North America, looking at those from kind of an industry perspective, seeing where you could utilize those, where some kind of buyers might be from the CO2 standpoint, and then from a sequestration side, where the pipelines are, CO2 pipelines are, as well as any storage facility. So we like kind of taking that kind of broad view from the emission standpoint to then understand, what else you can do with the CO2, and work with a lot of different companies around carbon capture. And this just kind of gives you a view of companies that are either subscribers on the Decarbon Fuse side or have participated in research or our individual kind of consulting projects. So from the capture standpoint, there's a lot of CO2 technology companies that we've worked with that really dig deep on what type of amines are best for kind of different CO2 sources. Then getting into kind of the transport side, typically those are more on the midstream kind of pipeline companies that are getting into CO2, but we have done a handful of rail and trucking for CO2. And then from a utilization standpoint, there's many different companies that are taking CO2 and putting it into products. So maybe that's CO2 to sustainable aviation fuel, or CO2 to cement, or CO2 to some type of chemical. And then the other piece to that is the storage side, where you have a lot of either former oil and gas companies or project developers that are looking at sequestration. And then the companies that are kind of supporting all across, whether that's the EPCs that were brought up, really tackling kind of the build out for the CO2 facilities, or build out for any of the midstream facilities, and then other services that are required, whether those are compressors, equipment, pumps, steel, even now getting into kind of chrome steel for some of the sequestration side. So a lot of interesting kind of connections to different industries and different companies.
Well, thank you for that, Gary. If you want to show your website and talk a little bit about HydroLink, I mean, you guys are all over. You have facilities all over, right?
I'll just talk about us because we're a great company, and I work for HydroLink. HydroLink are the world's largest independent pump modification repair service company. So we have service centers all over the US. We've got three in Houston, we've got one in Louisiana, LA, headquarters in Chicago, Canada, and then we've got two service centers in the Middle East. We've got Australia. We've got an engineering arm in the UK. So we're a truly global company, and we're still family owned. So we're still owned by Mrs. Harris now, who our founder George Harris unfortunately died a couple of years ago. But we still maintain that family ethos. And at our heart is engineering. So the core of Hydro is all about engineering. And we've tuned our engineers into helping people with pumping problems make those pumps better, make those problems go away. So I think from a sustainability standpoint, we've always been sustainable because we've never been about take the pump out, put a new one in, throw that one away. We've always been about make that pump last, make that pump more reliable. We cut our teeth in the 60s and 70s under Eleanor Mackay in the boiler feed pump modification market. Eleanor was a very famous engineer, pump engineer. And from that foundation, we've grown. We've grown from power into oil and gas, into all sorts of process fields. And I suppose I'm the least likely engineer to be sat here talking about sustainability when I've been in all these terrible fields of power and oil and gas. And so I've spent my career putting these pumps out there, and now I'm I'm sort of helping those pumps to last longer and help them to consume less power. But we don't just do repairs. We do a lot of things in hydro. We have condition monitoring. So condition monitoring is a great resource for understanding what's happening with your equipment. What is your equipment doing? And then we have a great evaluation process where we can look at your equipment, we can look at the geometry, we can change the geometry, we can look at the failure rates. We've got an enormous database of equipment that we've repaired and put back into service and made more reliable. And we've got shops all over the world, world class shops all over the world. And we've also got test facilities. So one of the things in Chicago that's a really great thing is we can take your pump, we can take the site readings, we can see what it's doing on site, and then we can modify it, put it on our independent test bed, which is Hydraulic Institute certified and was the first one in the world. And we can test that pump and we can see how much power it consumes, how much head it generates, and we can compare that to what it did before and show you the before and after. So I just like to say to everybody, if you have a problem pump, and who doesn't? Everybody's got a problem pump. So if you've got a problem pump, we're the guys to come. And what we can do is we can modify your equipment so it lasts longer, operates with, and consumes less power.
Interesting. Thank you for that. Now, you mentioned Hydraulic Institute. Tomas, you just got a spot there at the Hydraulic Institute, right?
Yes, I
Maybe you can
did. Yeah, on
tell
the
us
board of
about
directors.
tell us about Hydrostall and how that connection with the Hydraulic Institute's worked for you.
Sure. So a little bit about Hydrostall. We're a company that's based out of Switzerland. We have about 20 locations worldwide, about five production sites. We've been selling our product in the United States since 1982 through a distributor, but then in 2016, we established our own organization here. And we mainly focus on solid handling pumps. So anything from 2 inches to 28-inch discharge, solid handling, whether it be municipal or industrial. And we are the ones that invented the screw centrifugal impeller back in the 60s. And so it's a unique technology because it kind of bridges the gap between centrifugal pumps and positive displacement pumps. So it's a unique product, and we have a lot of hydraulics that cover different flows and heads and different applications. So I'll share my screen here. Let me know when it's on.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. So, Hydrostall values are independence, sustainability, and quality. And those are the key things we focus sustainability when it comes to energy and quality when it comes to long life. Some of our installations are over 40 years old. and require just basic preventive maintenance and independence, the ability to control who we purchase from, control how much we stock, to be able to service, to provide our customers a high level of service and support. And we also have taken on the responsibility of the sustainable goals. So there's a UN initiative that is that lists out different, I think there's 17 different goals, and we are focusing on these. And that is ensure access to water and sanitation for all, promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, employment, and decent for all, build resilient infrastructure, promote sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts, and conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources. So those are the four that we focus on. And when it comes to, I've been doing this for 19 years. 2 years ago, joined the Hydraulic Institute, and I think same time kind of got involved with Empowering Pumps. And between the two organizations, I've been exposed to the industry. I've been exposed to conferences, and it's amazing when a group of people get together that compete outside the walls, but when they come to these conferences, it's just working together, and it's awesome. It kind of sounds cliche, but it's not. It's really working together, and all the sales, the competition gets put to the back burner, and it's really helping, helping with standards, helping with education, helping with just getting, promoting the industry and moving it forward, whether it comes to sustainability, whether it comes to, like the standards, the influent design or testing standards, whatever it might be. And it's just something that I'm passionate about. I love it. Every day I wake up and I go, I can't believe I'm doing this, because it's just something that once you get into it, kind of grows on you. And if you're not liking what you do, then, you should be looking for another job.
Agreed. Fascinating. Thank you. Well, I don't know if we can solve all the problems regarding sustainability today, but this is certainly a first step in the right direction. Uh, Todd, you got anything to add to that? The floor is wide open now.
No, I would just say in closing, one thing that I've been doing is talking to several kind of local universities and also kind of preparing my son for college and everything else. And I think the future of kind of energy, the future of so many industrial applications involve sustainability and being able to deliver kind of low carbon products. And that's one thing that you can see throughout kind of my work, especially over the last 5 years, and then being able to take that and transform it into something that has direct value, because that's one of the arguments that I hear often kind of working with either power producers or even oil and gas or oilfield service companies. And once you can show that value associated to sustainability, I think it becomes even more clear and more about not just the right thing to do, but there's economic benefit, there's technology benefit, and you can see sustainability move throughout a company like that.
You froze there for a second, Todd. Sorry.
Yep, no
Maybe
problem.
maybe you can repeat that last paragraph.
Uh, I was just saying for the kind of the last point of a company can actually take these initiatives, and as long as they can show the economic benefits, the technology benefits, as well as, of course, kind of the environmental side and social side, that you can show that value all the way through kind of the life cycle of a project or the life cycle of a product, then that's really when sustainability becomes kind of core to the company and core to the products that are being offered.
Gary?
I would like to say, as a closing comment, that everyone who's got a pump is consuming a kilowatt, and every kilowatt has a consequence. And that consequence is both environmental and financial. So one of the great things you can do is stop consuming as many kilowatts. And we can help you do that, and we can help you make your pumps last longer in a sustainable way as well. So reduce the kilowatts.
Tomas, anything else to add?
Yeah, just to kind of go back to what I said, I think when you're looking at a pump selection, know what's out there. Know, go out there and look and don't talk just to one manufacturer's representative. Don't talk to just one distributor. Know what's out there. Know what kind of become educated, learn what is available, and pick the right pump. The right pump is going to change how much energy you use, how often you do maintenance, and that all comes together for sustainability. So look at BEP, look at the right pump, and make an educated decision.
Outstanding. Now it's my turn. I just want to do a selfish promo for Empowering Pumps and Equipment. This is our website. We have areas of, if you can see, some opportunity for advertising here and here. What we do is we provide and amplify the voices of our customers out to people that need to buy pumps and other equipment. We have a partner hub that has a number of partners here. If you're ever interested in hearing more, we welcome you to give me a shout. I'm just going to click on one partner and show you that they have all kinds of case studies and actual products available. All of this is a great tool to share your data. So if you're in the pump, motor, valve, seal industry, we welcome you to be part of this group here, either being a partner or an advertising client. We have a tremendous amount of traffic on our website. And selfish promotion. I also do a little thing called Lunch and Learn with Vince, which is probably one of the reasons why I'm doing this summit, is because I do these little lunch and learn videos. And Gary, I don't know if you know, but I did one a while back with Hydro about the condition monitoring product. And just if I could just dive in for a second there, if you have a problem and you're in Indiana, you may be talking to an engineer in the UK about the condition monitoring signal, and he could say, I've got 30 years experience. This is what you do. So it's quite an interesting concept there, and we talked a little bit about that on my lunch and learn video. But you guys, if you like this, please share it with your friends, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on the Sustainability Summit.